So, guys, I want to talk about AEW, and I felt like when I was watching Collision this weekend, and I did feel a little sad in a way because AEW kind of runs into this problem, and also like I went to Monday Night Raw in Madison Square Garden, and it kind of shows just one of the biggest problems with AEW. And I do want to mention that every professional wrestling company that's ever existed has consistent problems. So nothing is perfect. Like with Monday Night Raw, when I went to Madison Square Garden, like none of the matches stood out to me. But also when I went to Combat Zone Wrestling, they had they had a bunch of death matches, and with a lot of the death matches, I wish there were stories or people talking about how they wanted to participate in the tournament and death. Like there was really no sense of like story and whatever really, just to say, hey, every company has issues. But with AEW, the biggest issue that they have is they don't know how to build their entire roster. They don't know how to say, okay, well, there are certain wrestlers that are standing out. Let's make them big deals. Sometimes they do that, and then you have people like Swerve Strickland, Will Ospreay, MJF, Hangman Adam Page, CM Punk, and a couple other people rise to the occasion. And sometimes you have wrestlers like this week. You had Tommaso Ciampa, you had East Austin. Last year you had Kyle O'Reilly in Blood and Guts, and you also are having the Rascals and Eddie Kingston and many other ones that are standing out, but they're almost in the same spot. And then also there's a YouTuber named Wrestle Toddy, and she was talking about how too like there's a lot of wrestlers who are winning it on Ring of Honor, and they stand out, but then when they go to Collision or Dynamite, they're not really featured or they lose a lot. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that hurt AEW because it's almost like I think as OTR Central said this, when Wardlow was really really over when he was the biggest star in the company at one point, they fumble the bag really, and this is kind of what hurts AEW a lot. And let's talk about the Attitude Era. That really quick. One of the reasons why the Attitude Era was so good in WWE was that they made sure every wrestler that was doing well got featured well. They had a good story, and there was kind of like quality up and down the roster. You know, for example, like in AEW, you have like so many titles, but if this was like the Attitude Era in WWE, every single title would have people in their divisions. They would have compelling stories. They would have something entertaining about it and something like a little diverse about it. You could have the hardcore title be the fun title. You have the world heavyweight title be more like gritty and other things like that. You can have the tag team title also being fun because you had the Hardys, the Dudleys, and Edge and Christian back in the Attitude Era. But when you look at AEW, it's almost like all the same stuff, really. Like where it's a super long title reign, defended by people who have really epic matches. So I do think that when I was watching Collision, to get back to it, there were a couple of things that bothered me. That first of all, you have Dynasty next week, and Dynasty is like roughly like like at least like 10 days away. Maybe a little bit more than like 10 days away, really. But the point of it is that there was no matches added to the card. Number two was that you could even do the Owen Hart tournament, and you could have said something like, okay, well, Ace Austin is winning matches, or Ace Austin is having great performances. Kevin Knight is having really great performances. Speedball Mike Bailey, Okada, Kyle Fletcher, Mark Davis, and many Tommaso Ciampa, and many other people. There's many other people on that show that had some really great matches. And they could say something like, "Hey, you know what? I want to go to Wembley Stadium." You look at older people like Tommaso Ciampa or John Morrison, and they say, "Hey, you know what? I want one more shot at glory. My career's kind of winding down. I have like that. I want to give that last big effort. Imagine if you had that storyline with Tommaso Ciampa, John Morrison, and then you have a match at the pay-per-view for the Owen Hart tournament. Imagine if you did something where you even had Ace Austin, like say, like, I'm a young blood, I'm a young line, I was in other companies, I never really got a shot at a heavyweight title. There's always something for me to prove. So you did one of two things. You said something like, okay, well, he's going to participate in that Owen Hart tournament, or you said something like, maybe he's saying like, Kyle Fletcher, I have my eye on you, and I want to challenge you at Dynasty, or he says, you know what, says, you see Ace Dawson just say, you know what, I really, there's something I've got to do, and then he talks to Don Callis, and he says something like, he wants a match at Dynasty, and he says like, if I beat one of your guys, then I will face Kyle Fletcher at Double or Nothing. Like he says something like, obviously, I want to show, even though I want that title, I want to do it at Double or Nothing because I feel like I want to have more matches. I want to have a little bit more time to just show what I can do. Really, like honestly, like building up to something, like saying, okay, well, Ace Austin's just not just having great matches. People are saying he's got a lot of potential. There's talk about him, and then he kind of just disappears. Really, there's so much. With that. I also will say that's also true about Kevin Knight. Kevin Knight could say something like, hey, Okada cheated. Maybe I want to face Kyle Fletcher because, maybe the guy has more honor than Okada. So it's TNT Championship, Kevin Knight, or Kevin Knight says something like, okay, Okada cheated. This guy's a scumbag. I want to have a no DQ match with him, and it's just me and him. Or maybe we have a steel cage match or something like that at Dynasty. Like there's no really build. There's no like saying, hey, you know what? I got some momentum. I'm a wrestler. I'm on the roster. I got some momentum. Let's like build to some matches really. And it's so freaking easy. Like they cut a lot of promos, but there's not really build. You can even done something where and I think this is one of the biggest sins, and I need to do a video about this, is really the trios division, because you have MXM, with John Morrison and MXM, you have Dalton Castle and the Outrunners, you have the Bang Bang Gang, you have the Death Riders, you have the Don Callis family, you have Kevin Knight and Speedball and Mystico. Like there are so many trios teams, and they really do nothing with them. They're just there to be there. There could be so much like, hey, you know what? Let's have like as out in my fantasy book, let's have like a trios ladder match. You take 4 trios teams, and then you have a ladder match, with all of them, and that could be really really good. Or even like have the Rascals in that, because the Rascals are kind of getting over, but there's really no sense of saying, hey, we're doing really great stuff. Let's talk. Let's have promos. Let's build really, because that's why WWE is the best really. Quite honestly, because you look at NXT, you look at somebody like Obafemi. What's happening to Obafemi? He was on the NXT roster, and now he's facing Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. They're not doing some dumb shit like saying, okay, Obafemi's over, but we're going to like feature him maybe once every 1 or 2 months, really, every month and a half on Raw, and he really has no direction, really. You look at somebody like with what they're doing with many other people in NXT. You have like Ricky Starks being featured a bunch of times. You also have Blake Monroe being featured a bunch of times. But yes, they're also screwing the pooch, because you also look at Powerhouse Hobbs, who's kind of disappeared, and they said there might be a tag team of Powerhouse Hobbs and Jelly Roll at WrestleMania, and that does seem like maybe like a comedy match, and that's not really how Hobbs should be booked. Or they may say something like Obafemi is like so over in WWE, you can't have another like big powerhouse type of person, because it's like too repetitive really. So maybe when Obafemi's like star power kind of recedes, or maybe there's a direction for him, then where do you bring in Powerhouse Hobbs really? So yes, WWE does have a lot of stars. They have a lot of people with potential, but not everybody kind of reaches the top really. But they kind of know when somebody's a big deal, you utilize them. Or look at LA Knight. I think LA Knight should be a WWE champion, but he kind of goes into that Rowdy Piper type of role really, where he should be a champion, but they'll never put him in that spot really. There's many other wrestlers like that. In my opinion, really, that they have the full package. They may have some weaknesses, but they're never going to be champion, really. But they know how to say, okay, make him a commentator. What would happen if you have, Samoa Joe as a commentator? Or what would happen if you have MJF as a commentator to, Swerve Strickland and Brody King? What would happen if you have like Ace Austin or Kevin Knight or Speedball be a commentator to like maybe a Speedball Kevin Knight or Ace Austin or whatever type of match, or Tommaso Ciampa being a commentator. Like there's no, like, as I said, there's not a lot of consistent building up everybody. And then people talk about the women's division. You look at how Harley Cameron and um I forgot her name. Not Will Nightingale. We're kind of talking really like maybe you could do something where Will Nightingale says, you know what, I've been losing a lot. You know what, maybe the Baby's Wrath shouldn't be together because you know what, I just am stinking of the rear because I'm too ambitious or whatever. I just want to be the TBS champion. You know, I don't want to like work with Harley anymore. She can find somebody who's better than me. I lost some of my confidence. And then she has an open challenge, and then you can have Harley Cameron come out and say, hey, you know what? That's not the girl that I've wrestled with. You know, you are someone with a lot of potential, and I'm going to knock some sense into you. So you lead to a match of babyface versus babyface. You know what? You're down, you're like, I want to build you up. Or you say something like, you know, Harley Cameron is saying something like, you know, you look at Tekla, you know, she's a little out of control and she doesn't have that she doesn't have passion, but she has a passion just to be a bitch or to be hurting people or to cheat, really, you know. And that's not what this title should be about, really. I want to honor Toni Storm, somebody with passion. And then she has a match with Tekla. She gets the shit beating out of her. She almost nearly dies from the beating. And then you have Willow versus Tekla for the women's championship, and then you kind of work towards Willow being the AEW the first AEW Women's Triple Crown, and then you have Mercedes, and then they have a match at Wembley Stadium, and maybe Mercedes kind of learns, okay, you know what? I look at Willow. You know, Willow has heart, and that's the biggest thing that Mercedes missing. She has ego. You know, Mercedes has pride, but she doesn't have heart. You know, so that could be something. Or like I've said, that one of the biggest issues with AEW is also is also Athena. Like it's honestly bad. Like her full time job really is the ROH Women's Champion, and you kind of look at how when she's ever on AEW television, she always loses. Or like, you know, in the Owen Hart tournament, she lost to Mercedes, really. So there's always like that thing too of sometimes you might have people like Athena hold a title. She's more than ready to just be graduated from that title, but we're going to keep the ROH title on her. She's going to definitely beat the Hulk Hogan reign, but then it's like, what do you do when you take the title off of her? What do you do when you put her on the main roster? And you may say, hey, you know what, we're going to actually not feature you that well because obviously we don't have a second place for the ROH women's title, so you're going to keep holding that for a long, long time. There's some people saying that Persephone and a couple of other women were getting over, but it's like, where are they really? You look at Nyla Rose, who's a great talker. She could be in the Hurt Syndicate. Or, like I said about Marina Shafir, you could have easily done Marina Shafir versus Will Nightingale last year. That was a big match you could have done because they were both in Anarchy in the Arena. You could have done easily Megan Bain in bigger spots or whatever, really. But it's like what I said, that sometimes when you have a wrestler that's over, and even if they're a new guy, especially a new guy like the Rascals, like they got over, they had like that really great Las Vegas match a few weeks ago. And then it's almost like, you know, you really have nothing for them. They exist to exist really. That's why it's important to have good writers or to say, okay, this person's got some momentum. Let's kind of invest in them because really a great roster is when everybody is must see, really. And when somebody is must see and then you make them must see, it's not just, well, they're must see, but then they just hang around and then they don't have that momentum anymore. So I really think that the issue with AEW is that they're a big momentum killer, and WWE knows how to utilize momentum a lot better. And that's kind of why AEW is just a show just to have great matches. It's to have great matches, but it's not to capitalize on wrestlers when they are getting over. You know, that needs to happen way more consistently. And in addition to that, you know, it's like what I said, it's not great matches. It's great character. It's great talking. It's great, like, hyping. It's great building of people. And as I said, WWE is the master of that, even though, as I said, I went to a 3-hour show, and obviously there was nothing captivating in the sense of matches, really. So I think AEW, they need to capitalize on the momentum of people. They need to capitalize on new people who are actually getting over with the audience and make them bigger deals, and then also try to make their divisions bigger deals. But also understand that Tony has to realize that it may be the best thing for him to kind of say, hey, you know what, he has plans, he has ideas for wrestlers, he doesn't want to pivot, but he should really learn to pivot and say, hey, look, what are these rascals? What are the rascals doing? Why are they so over? You know, can we kind of have matches with them, the Young Bucks? Could we have matches at Revolution instead of just like, you know, maybe some matches that doesn't need to be on the card? Hey, what's this Ace Dawson guy doing? Like, you know, it seems like he's getting over. Maybe we should have the trios titles defended against the against the Bang Bang Gang, or maybe he should try to go after the Non Callis family or Kevin Knight. Maybe we can try to give him the TNT title this year and give Speedball the Continental title, but maybe they should kind of do some singles matches, or maybe Kevin Knight and Speedball are kind of mad with Hangman, or like maybe Hangman is somebody who really needs to have the sense knocked into him. Let's have a match with Hangman versus Kevin Knight or something like that, you know. So there's always like something that they can do to kind of like look at what's going on with their roster, look at who's getting over, look at who they want to build, and make bigger and better matches and stuff like that. Like honestly, the ability to kind of capitalize on momentum and build good stories, or say, hey, here's some stories that are just smacking us in the face, really, that's lacking in AEW, really. So it's just like, as I said, AEW, their biggest issue is that they don't capitalize on momentum and maintain it or build new stars based on the momentum that is already existing right now.